Hey, welcome back, welcome in. Alright, something I did do these last few days was replace, so we'll see, I think this little pause that starts out each and every one of my videos, I think that's something that might be a Chromebook glitch that I'm working through, okay? But I think the Wi-Fi, we should experience less interruptions. Of course, I don't have everybody in the house here at this time, but let's go ahead and read through this portion of 2 Samuel. We're talking about hardship and turmoil and war and battle, just hinting in it in the introduction video, and how important in times like that, right? Times like this, I would say, to how important it is to turn to your faith in zeal, right? To turn to your faith in zeal and obedience to the Lord. So we'll be literally reading about this today. So this is from, I guess, let me just look here. It's saying Vulgate, and then it's saying Psalm 112 verse 1. So I don't know what this Vulgate thing is. I think maybe he just quoted this psalm and maybe a portion of text. I'm not exactly sure, but we're going to go ahead and quote this as, "Happy is the man who fears the Lord, who is only too willing to follow his orders." Who is only too willing to follow his orders. Happy is the man. All right. So we talked about living in uncertain times and how it's not comfortable and it's not settling for anyone. But happy is the man or woman who fears the Lord, and is only too willing to follow his orders. So that's the key right there, right? We just spoke about obedience and having zeal. You know, why not in these times of trouble and in times of peace? Why not have this zeal for the Lord? I think it is very helpful in pushing you forward and motivating you forward when you might feel uncertain or stressed. But happiness will shine through. That's honestly how I feel. I wouldn't say guilty for skipping days and getting a little bit lazy during this vacation season, but it does, make me almost feel like something is missing in the heart, right? When I'm not just 100% in the Word and studying the Word, I really do feel something is missing. But happy I am, and happy is man who regains connection. So that's exactly what I feel. Happiness really all the time. It really does motivate just everything and in spirit, right? So that's a gorgeous little part here. We're going to discuss David, who has been really nothing but obedient to the Lord. Again, he establishes that connection and that honor and that respect with the Lord very early on in his story, always attributing his successes to the Lord, right? And asking the Lord's permission when he should move forth or when he should take a step back. He remained humble even in his glory, in his kingship. He remains very humble, right? So let's go ahead and read about this portion here. We're going to start out with chapter 10. And yes, we are on part 6, halfway through. I'm assuming we'll get everything done in 12 parts, maybe making some sections a little bit longer, but let's go ahead and read through this and see where we fall, okay? It says, "In the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his son Halam succeeded him as king. David thought, 'I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me.'" So, as we remember, I don't know, it took me actually a minute to remember what relationship David had with the Ammonites. But when David was escaping Saul's wrath, right, he was fearful of Saul, he actually went and lived with the Ammonites, and he was working under Nahash, right? We remember the Ammonites were going to battle with the Israelites, and Nahash asked David, "Will you fight with us, David? This is a little bit conflicting." And they decided eventually not to let David fight with them, just because they thought David would be kind of a double agent, or that was what Nahash's advisors had said. So luckily and thankfully, David did not have to fight against his own people at that time. But he was with the Ammonites. He was doing various raids and things like that for him. And Nahash was really looking out after David as he was still young. I mean, we talked about David taking reign over Israel at age 30. So you can imagine David with the Ammonites as he was evading Saul. He was still very young and, would need that protection and father figure, if you will. So Nahash of the Ammonites was that person, and it does say here that he had passed away. But David, being the moral character that he is, wants to go ahead and show kindness to his son as a repayment of sorts. So it says here, David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. The Ammonite commanders said to Hanun, their lord, "Do you think David is honoring your father by sending envoys to express sympathy? Hasn't David sent them to you only to explore the city and spy it out and overthrow it?" So Helam seized David's envoys and shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garments at the buttocks, and sent them away. Alright, so this was a little bit of a backfire, right? Of course, David was coming out of the kindness of his heart, but at this time, especially, David has this reputation of being essentially like a warlord. He was very, very intense in his power. He really did do a fantastic job, if you don't mind me saying, taking over cities, right, and whipping everybody into shape, if you will. I'm sorry for being casual with that, but David was definitely very, very powerful in the military realm, right? We knew this from the beginning, right? But he had a very strong reputation of being somebody to overtake things. So the advisors, again, right, where we talk a lot about these advisors whispering in the ears of the leaders. Of course, it's not the Lord, right? It's human advisors that are saying these things. So they did something cruel and rude, and David did bite back. I forget what his reaction exactly was to this. Of course, it was mortifying to have. Can you imagine having half your beard shaved and then cutting your garments off so your butts are showing? That's pretty terrible and pretty embarrassing. So the Ammonites realized they had been obnoxious to David, and then they became even more fearful. They hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers to Beth Rehob and Zobah, as well as the king of Maakah with 10,000 men, and also 12,000 men from Tob. So they gathered not only some people from the Ammonites, but they hired these extra civilizations, these extra territories, to go ahead and fight for them as well. Because they're fearful. They're like, okay, well, now David is really going to do something in response to our response. So it says, on hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. Hadadezer had Arameans brought from beyond the Euphrates River, and they went to Halam with Shobak, the commander of Hadadezer's army, leading them. So they're all gearing up, right? They even employed more people over on the Ammonite side. Then when David was told of this, he gathered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, and went to Helam. The Arameans formed their battle lines to meet David and fought against him. But they fled before Israel, and David killed 700 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also struck down Shobak, the commander of their army, and he died there. Alright, you guys, so very brief. It goes, of course, into great detail in the biblical text when I'm not skipping all the lines, but we get the gist, right? They had all this military on the Ammonite side, and they gathered everybody from really every realm to go ahead and fight. But as soon as they saw David, fear was so stricken in them that they scattered immediately. They really didn't even try to fight in this scenario. They just completely scattered, and they ran away, essentially. Again, it's just because David had the Lord backing him. That relationship, I told you, is very, very strong. So David had really the fear of the Lord and the power of the Lord behind him, and that's why all of the enemies just completely scattered. So it was very quick and very abrupt, and that's why it says here, happy is the man who fears the Lord, who is only willing to follow his orders. So in this sense, this is David. Because David fears the Lord, everybody who approaches David also fears the Lord in the opposite sense, not having that relationship with the Lord. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. But yes, that was the result of that little battle there with the Ammonites. I shouldn't say little, because that was quite a lot. 700 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. So, goodness gracious, that is the story of 2 Samuel chapter 10. And we are going to read about a little bit of a downfall of David after this. I'll see if I can get to it soon enough. But I appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.